The air in Thessaloniki on that bright May morning in 2025 was a living narrative, a palimpsest of sense that spoke of millennia of uninterrupted habitation and exchange. It was thick with the bracing salt tang of the Aegean Sea, a constant, invigorating reminder of the port's ancient purpose and its enduring connection to the wider world. This mingled effortlessly with the sharp aroma of freshly brewed Greek coffee wafting from bustling cafes spilling onto the sidewalks, the sweet, delicate perfume of flowering jasmine vines tumbling over the stone walls of hidden courtyards, and the subtle, earthy tang of dried herbs and roasted meats from market stalls near Aristoteles Square. Structures that hadn't changed location in centuries, rooted in the city's ancient heart. This was a city built not in stark layers of dominance and replacement, but in intricate weaves of coexistence, adaptation, and continuous evolution. Byzantine brickwork of ancient churches met the sturdy, elegant stone of Venetian fortifications along the waterfront. Greek neoclassical facades from the 19th century stood proudly beside older, more vernacular Balkan structures on the hillsides, all bathed in a Mediterranean sun that seemed to bless this particular, harmonious blend of influences. There was no single, imposing minaret soaring over a grand imperial mosque. No vast, centrally planned bazaar section built by imperial fiat stretching across blocks. Just the gentle undulation of a city that had grown organically, shaped by a multitude of different hands, cultures, and histories, none of them holding absolute, transformative sway for half a millennium. Dr. Elena Petrova inhaled this air every morning on her walk from her apartment in the Ano Poli, down towards the university in the lower city. It was more than just the scent of her home, it was the very essence of her life's work. Thessaloniki was not merely a backdrop, it was the primary text of a history that hadn't unfolded as others had. Growing up here, she'd been captivated by the visible, almost tactile layers of the past. The way a surviving Roman archway might be seamlessly incorporated into the foundation of an early Byzantine church, which in turn might have a Venetian-era bell tower or addition, all before a modern building rose nearby, deliberately echoing the older styles with respectful contemporary materials. Her yaya, a repository of local lore and family history stretching back generations, had filled her childhood imagination with stories of vibrant trade with independent city-states like Dubrovnik and Genoa, of complex, often tense, relationships with various Serbian lords and Bulgarian kings to the north, of a past that felt vibrant, complex, and fundamentally continuous, uninterrupted by a long period of foreign imperial rule that had so profoundly reshaped other parts of the region in alternative historical accounts she read in her studies. These stories, and the tangible evidence embedded in the city's stones and street plan, had sparked a burning, almost personal question in her young mind. How fundamentally different was the process of urban development, cultural synthesis, and historical evolution when a single dominant imperial power never emerged to conquer and reshape everything in its image? This foundational question had driven her academic path, leading her to specialize in the urban history of the post-Byzantine fragmentation, her term for the period from the late 14th to the 19th centuries across southeastern Europe and Anatolia. In this world, where the small Ottoman Beylik, perhaps due to stronger Byzantine resistance, more cohesive Turkic rivals, or a devastating early military defeat, had faltered and failed to consolidate into a transcontinental empire. This era was not defined by a single narrative of imperial rise and fall. Instead, it was a rich, complex tapestry woven from the resilience and independent evolution of numerous regional powers, successor states to the Byzantine Empire in Greece and the Aegean, independent Serbian and Bulgarian kingdoms, Bosnian principalities, Wallachia, and Moldavia, and a shifting mosaic of Turkic beyliks and Persian-influenced states in Anatolia. It was a field bursting with untapped potential, drawing on disparate archives scattered across dozens of former state capitals, church treasuries, and the meticulously kept records of powerful merchant guilds. Her office, located in a wing of the University of Thessaloniki that ingeniously incorporated a genuine section of the ancient Byzantine city walls into its structure, offered a direct view of the bustling port, a port whose history was a story of competing mercantile interests and shifting naval powers, rather than unified imperial control. Inside, the space was a perfect reflection of her mind. Meticulously organized research materials, coexisting with personal artifacts that grounded her work in the human experience. Bookshelves overflowed with academic texts on urban morphology, regional histories, and the economic networks of the Mediterranean, interspersed with worn copies of historical maps, their lines sketching out forgotten borders and trade routes. On a small side table sat a beautifully crafted, slightly chipped ceramic bowl she'd bought years ago on a research trip to Verbosna. Its intricate geometric pattern and earthy glaze, unlike anything found in Greek or Italian pottery. A small, constant, tangible reminder of the distinct cultural paths taken elsewhere in the Balkans due to this different history. A framed photograph on her desk showed the layered skyline of Thessaloniki, a visual hypothesis of her research. Elena's current project was her most ambitious to date, to move beyond descriptive historical accounts and create a quantifiable, data-driven understanding of urban development in this unique historical context. She sought to answer a specific, pressing question that her intuition, honed by years of studying Thessaloniki's own complex layers, whispered was crucial to understanding the broader region. Why, precisely, did cities across the Balkans and Anatolia that escaped Ottoman rule develop such dramatically different urban forms, even when they shared some initial characteristics? Was there a common, non-imperial pattern identifiable across all these cities? Or was each city's path fundamentally unique, dictated almost entirely by hyperlocal factors and specific regional power dynamics? This wasn't just about absence. It was about the nature of the presence that filled the vacuum. Her AI platform, a powerful cluster of servers housed in the university's data center, which she affectionately nicknamed Clio after the muse of history, was processing an unprecedented volume of historical data. Digitalized historical maps from archives in Sofia, Belgrade, Verbosna, the enduring Slavic name for the city that became Sarajevo in our timeline, Bucharest, and numerous other formerly independent or semi-autonomous urban centers were being layered with archaeological data, building footprints, construction materials, foundation dates, and likely functions derived from excavation reports. Digitized census records from different eras provided demographic shifts and community distributions. Even digital scans of historical, panoramic sketches, early photographs, and detailed engravings were fed into the system to help reconstruct lost streetscapes and building heights, providing visual context. Clio's formidable task was to identify overarching patterns of growth, analyze changes in urban morphology over time, and map the spatial distribution and evolution of different architectural styles and community centers within each city. For months, the initial data runs had shown general trends that were, to some extent, predictable. Cities under strong centralized native rule for significant periods, like Sofia at the height of a powerful Bulgarian kingdom, or Belgrade, under a succession of strong Serbian czars, showed evidence of more deliberate, centrally planned infrastructure investment. Fortified walls, major bridges, the laying out of principal streets, and the construction of grand public or religious buildings reflecting the power of the state. Cities that were primarily key trading republics, like Dubrovnik on the Adriatic coast, a significant independent power in this timeline, showed development heavily driven by mercantile needs, the construction of warehouses, expansion of harbor facilities, and the building of elegant merchant palaces. Thessaloniki itself, under alternating Byzantine, Venetian, and later Greek administration, reflected a blend of strategic military fortification, efficient port development, and municipal planning. But the truly striking, hypothesis-confirming patterns emerged when Clio performed the comparative analysis Elena had designed, specifically contrasting the urban development of Verbosna and Sofia during periods when they were capitals of independent states or centers of strong regional power, not under external imperial control, with the development patterns observed in cities like Thessaloniki or even Dubrovnik. The large screen in Elena's office glowed with complex, multi-layered visualizations that represented centuries of urban evolution condensed into dynamic maps. On one side, Thessaloniki's growth spread outwards from its ancient fortified core and harbor, its port area showing clear signs of strategic, planned expansion under Venetian rule, followed by later municipal planning under the Hellenic Republic. The development, while layered, showed a certain coherence imposed by centralized authority. On the other side, the visualizations for Verbosna and Sofia during comparable periods were fundamentally different. They didn't show growth radiating from a single dominant center or following a clear grid pattern laid out by a central authority. Instead, the urban fabric seemed to clump and grow in distinct, almost separate pockets. Concentrations of robust architectural investment, a cluster of large, well-built stone structures, a particularly grand church, a fortified municipal building, appeared in different parts of the city during different centuries, often spatially and temporally linked to specific institutions or ruling entities. A district anchored by a prominent church with a unique architectural style might date from a period of particularly strong royal or church patronage in the 16th century. A cluster of sturdy stone buildings forming a small defensible quarter would be tied to a powerful local noble family's urban manor house from the 15th century, its design reflecting their need for security. A section of workshops and merchant houses near a particular city gate would show architectural styles reflecting trade partners, perhaps strong Ragusan, Dubrovnik, influence in Verbosna, or Wallachian styles in Sofia. Their irregular layout dictated more by the organic needs of specific guilds and trades, rather than a master plan. There was no single grand avenue laid out to connect imaginary imperial institutions, because there were no such central institutions spanning centuries. There were main streets, yes, but they often followed older organic paths, widening or narrowing based on usage rather than being imposed by design. Crucially, the architectural styles didn't evolve uniformly across the entire city at the same time. They varied dramatically from one district to the next, each area's buildings a frozen moment reflecting the specific power, wealth, and external connections dominant in that micro-location at the time of construction or renovation. Clio, overlay architectural style identifiers with historical political control maps for Verbosna and Sofia, specifically focusing on the 14th through 19th centuries, Elena requested, her voice tight with building excitement, her eyes glued to the screen. Highlight periods of localized non-imperial rule, independent kingdoms, powerful local dynasties, periods of strong guild influence. Identify concentrations of distinct architectural styles and correlate them directly with those ruling families, dominant church hierarchies, or influential guilds. The AI processed the complex request, cross-referencing centuries of spatial and political data. The complex maps shifted again, highlighting areas of distinct architectural coherence with color codes representing the likely patron. The correlation was immediate, statistically robust, and visually stunning. The areas with the sturdy, almost defensive architecture in Verbosna, they lit up during periods when specific Bosnian bands or powerful local noble families held significant urban power and invested in their urban seats. The churches with particular fresco styles and architectural forms in Sofia, they correlated directly with the reigns of Bulgarian czars who heavily patronized the National Orthodox Church as a symbol of state identity. The merchant houses with distinct Adriatic architectural details in Verbosna, they appeared prominently during centuries when trade with Dubrovnik flourished and Ragusan merchants held significant influence in the city council. Correlation coefficient between localized architectural investment concentrations and periods of specific regional dynasty or institutional dominance exceeds 0.9 in analyzed datasets for Verbosna and Sofia across the target centuries, Clio reported, its synthesized voice calm amidst Elena's internal storm of confirmation. Statistical significance is high. Analysis indicates the observed urban development pattern is fundamentally decentralized, non-uniform at the macro level, and directly reflects the fragmented nature of political and economic power and the diversity of patrons across the target centuries. Elena stared at the screen, a long, shaky breath escaping her lips. This wasn't just an academic theory or an intuitive feeling. It was empirically proven in the very stones and layout of the cities. The absence of a single imperial force hadn't led to a vacuum or urban chaos. It had allowed a multitude of smaller, regional, and even hyper-local powers to imprint their own specific identities, priorities, and aesthetic preferences onto the urban fabric over time. The result was a patchwork city, an unplanned city that grew based on the shifting fortunes, unique cultural nuances, and specific styles of its diverse stakeholders across centuries. This stood in stark contrast to cities like Thessaloniki, which, while never Ottoman, had experienced long periods under more centralized, albeit different authorities, Venice, then the Hellenic Republic, which imposed a different kind of order and uniformity on development. The stakes of her research suddenly felt much higher, extending beyond the confines of the academic world. Her work wasn't just a complex academic exercise in data analysis. It was a data-driven argument about the fundamental nature of historical causality, demonstrating the profound and lasting impact of imperial structures, or their absence, not just on political maps, but on the physical and cultural landscape of human society and its built environment. It challenged any simplistic notion that removing one empire would automatically lead to a single, predictable alternative outcome. Instead, it showed a proliferation of outcomes, a blossoming of distinct regional identities, and urban forms etched in stone and street patterns. The conference in Verbosna in the autumn, scheduled to focus precisely on the built heritage of the post-Byzantine Balkans, was no longer just a place to present findings. It was the crucial arena where she would make this crucial argument to the international academic community. The little ceramic bowl on her office table, a quiet symbol of a distinct regional culture, seemed to hum with a new, amplified significance. Arriving in Verbosna felt like stepping directly inside the dynamic visualizations Cleo had shown her. The city, nestled in its narrow valley along the Miljacka River, wasn't dominated by sweeping avenues or monumental, uniform squares, radiating from a central point. Instead, it felt dense, intricate, a collection of distinct neighborhoods that seemed to have grown together organically over time, like crystals forming in a solution or cells dividing and clustering. The air here had a different quality than Thessaloniki, cooler, carrying the crisp scent of the surrounding mountain forests and the specific, slightly smoky, earthy smell of burning wood from traditional stoves, mingled with the aroma of roasting lamb from small street-side grills. Visually, it was a captivating riot of textures and forms. The rough-hewn gray stone of older defensive walls and bridge abutments. The smoother, more decorative facades of houses from later centuries exhibiting varied influences. The diverse rooflines of numerous churches belonging to different Christian denominations, Orthodox and Catholic, reflecting Bosnia's unique religious history and its position between different spheres of influence, and the scattering of smaller, less imposing prayer houses belonging to localized Muslim communities that had developed over centuries, often linked to specific trades or migrations. As she walked from her hotel towards the conference venue, a beautifully restored 16th century building that had once served as the primary hall for one of the city's powerful merchant guilds, its architecture reflecting the wealth and autonomy of that specific group. Elena found herself constantly comparing the physical reality to the intricate layers and clusters her AI models had revealed. Yes, there was the section her data had highlighted as reflecting the sturdy, almost defensive architecture of the early Bosnian kings and nobility, built from local stone. Over there, closer to the river where the Miljacka flowed under bridges that seemed to have been added piecemeal over centuries rather than planned together, were buildings with larger windows, more decorative cornices, and carved details that exactly matched the patterns Cleo had correlated with increased trade links to the Adriatic republics, particularly Dubrovnik in the 17th century. The markets weren't concentrated in one vast planned area, but were scattered, smaller clusters around different squares or street intersections, each specializing in different goods, reflecting the specific guilds or communities that historically dominated that particular commerce. The distinct lack of a single, imposing imperial complex no equivalent of a vast Ottoman imperial mosque, and its associated charitable and administrative buildings, a kulia. Dominating the urban core, was palpable and spoke volumes about the different power dynamics that had shaped this city. It was the significant absence of that singular centralizing force that ultimately defined the presence of this decentralized, varied urban form, a negative space filled by a multitude of smaller, distinct positive spaces. The main hall of the conference venue buzzed with a vibrant energy, a confluence of academic minds from across southeastern Europe, Anatolia, and even representatives from states in the Middle East, whose histories had also been profoundly different in this timeline. Elena felt a familiar knot of nervous excitement in her stomach, a feeling compounded by the weight of knowing that her presentation wasn't just sharing interesting data. It was offering a potentially transformative framework for understanding half a millennium of history in this crucial part of the world. Her presentation, scheduled for the opening morning, began by laying out the established understanding of urban development in cities that had experienced periods of strong, centralized power in this timeline. Thessaloniki under Venetian and Greek rule, Dubrovnik as a resilient independent republic. She used their more ordered, planned elements as a point of comparison. Then, with dramatic precision, she unveiled her AI's analysis of Verbosna and Sofia. The visualizations on the main screen shifted between the relatively crisp, almost planned layouts of Thessaloniki's Venetian harborfront and the intricate, organic sprawl of Verbosna's varied architectural styles, each highlighted section labeled with the historical period and the dominant local institution, royal court, specific noble family, powerful guild, church body, it correlated to, as the statistical data and geospatial visualizations powerfully demonstrate, Elena stated, her voice clear and confident now, projecting across the hushed room. The absence of a single, overarching imperial authority like the Ottoman Empire in this timeline did not lead to urban chaos or a uniform lack of development. Instead, it unleashed a multitude of localized, regional, and institutional forces. Urban growth in cities like Verbosna and Sofia, during centuries that in another history would have seen Ottoman imperial planning, became a direct reflection of the fragmented political and social landscape. Development was shaped by the specific priorities, limited resources, and aesthetic preferences of regional dynasties, powerful guilds, influential religious institutions, and even wealthy merchant families, rather than being dictated by a singular, centralized imperial vision or a uniform administrative approach. She showed graphs illustrating the difference in scale and location of architectural investment. Large, centrally funded projects in Thessaloniki or Dubrovnik versus smaller, dispersed projects in Verbosna and Sofia, each tied to a specific local patron. She demonstrated how periods of strong, unified rule within these regional states did lead to more cohesive building projects, but these were limited in scope and inherently tied to the specific identity of that state, a Bulgarian kingdom promoting its national church, a Bosnian ban reinforcing his specific authority through fortifications, and were often confined to specific districts or types of buildings, unlike the pervasive, transformative, imperial stamp left by the Ottomans in our world. The Q&A session was lively and extended, a testament to the impact of her findings. Dr. Ivan Dimitrov from the University of Sofia was among the first to speak. Dr. Petrova, your quantitative data on Sofia resonates strongly with my own qualitative historical research, he said, nodding. We see the same pattern of architectural bursts tied to the reigns of specific czars and the influence of metropolitan bishops. It provides robust confirmation that our capital's built history is a sequence of national assertions and regional influences, not imperial impositions. Professor Anja Novak from Belgrade offered a different, complementary perspective. Belgrade's history in this timeline is perhaps a fascinating blend, she posited. While never under Ottoman rule here, its strategic location meant significant periods of strong influence from both the expanding Serbian kingdom to the south and, later, the northern empires, Hungary, then Austria. Your framework helps explain why the city shows both pockets of strong Serbian medieval style in its core, and later, more planned, Central European Baroque or neoclassical elements in its northern districts. Another example of layered but distinct external influences replacing the potential Ottoman one, resulting in a different kind of fragmentation. Scholars from Anatolia and the Middle East added further layers of complexity and confirmation. Professor Kemal Eren from the Beyliks Historical Institute in Anatolia showed images of cities like Bursa and Konya under the rule of various successor states to the Seljuks and competing Turkic beyliks. Your concept of localized architectural investment is key to understanding Anatolian urban history in this period, Eren noted. Our cities show clear cycles of building tied to the rise and fall of specific emirate dynasties, often with strong Persianate styles layered upon earlier Seljuk foundations, but without the widespread, unifying Ottoman imperial style we see documented in alternative historical studies of the region. Dr. Leyla Al-Masri from Cairo discussed the enduring Mamluk architectural style in Egypt and the Levant. While the Mamluks were a centralized power, their aesthetic and urban planning principles differed fundamentally from what the Ottomans introduced elsewhere in the Levant in that other history, she explained. Your work provides a valuable comparative case, highlighting how even different forms of centralized power leave vastly distinct urban signatures, and contrasting them with the decentralized patterns you've identified. The discussion extended beyond architecture to touch upon the broader implications for cultural identity, religious demographics, and the very concept of Balkan or Middle Eastern identity in this world. Without the shared, albeit often contentious and complex, experience of Ottoman rule and its unique synthesis of cultures and administrative structures, regional identities had remained more distinct. Their histories less intertwined by a common imperial administration or a shared experience of being part of a single, vast entity. Religious lines, while still crucial, were drawn differently. The interaction between various Christian denominations, Orthodox, Catholic, various smaller sects, and localized Muslim communities, as well as Jewish populations which had migrated differently across the Mediterranean, had followed divergent paths, leading to a more varied religious map in many areas. Elena felt a profound sense of intellectual and personal validation as the conference concluded. Her data and analysis had resonated deeply with scholars working in different fields and regions, providing a concrete, empirical framework for understanding the deep structural differences of this world. It wasn't a story of what was lost by the absence of an empire, but a story of what was built, a complex, multifaceted reality where history unfolded not along a single grand imperial narrative, but as a collection of countless unique, localized stories, each leaving its distinct, indelible mark on the physical and cultural landscape of southeastern Europe, Anatolia, and the Middle East. Leaving Verbosna, walking once more through its dense, unplanned, organically grown streets before heading to the airport, Elena looked around with a deeper sense of understanding and appreciation. The chipped ceramic bowl she had bought here years ago, a quiet symbol of a distinct regional culture, felt even more significant now. Her research, validated by her peers and visibly confirmed in the very stones and alleys beneath her feet, had illuminated one of the fundamental ways this world differed from another she only knew through abstract academic studies and historical speculation. It was a world of resilient regional identities, of cities that were rich mosaics of local power and diverse external connection, a powerful testament to the enduring power of history's road not taken, a reality forever shaped by the silent, unrisen crescent. Her work was far from over. There were countless other cities, countless other layers of history waiting to be understood through this new lens. But for now, standing in the heart of Verbosna, a city that had grown according to its own rules, she felt the quiet satisfaction of having brought a crucial piece of this complex, alternative past into sharper, data-driven focus, sharing it with the world and opening new avenues for future discovery.